And I was probably not at the reception for more than 5 minutes, and I met you, and it was indeed life-changing, not just for me, but more so for my daughter.
Like, I have chills. Like, we're
Life
only, like, right into
life
it, and I'm, like, hair on my arms.
changing you and deeper healing not only saved my daughter's life, but you gave her new life. So very profound experience. I recall you saying, I think our doctors can help your daughter. And I remember you saying, telling us exactly what you said about praying before you walked in, and you referred to it as divine. I very clearly remember that.
Sometimes I know when it's like a divine moment, and I'm like, whoa, this is definitely a divine moment. To the Deeper Healing Podcast, I'm Danielle Howley.
And I'm Tiffany Jackson, here at Raw and Real, from recovered patients sharing their healing journeys in their own words, and from medical experts pioneering new approaches to chronic illness.
These are patients who found answers after everything had failed them.
Join us at the Deeper Healing Podcast.
Hi, this is Danielle Howley and Tiffany Jackson with the Deeper Healing Podcast. We have mind-blowing guest today, guest and her mom. This is Meghan and Cindy Bayer, and I thank you so much for traveling in today. I know this was a drive for you, and I'm excited that you're here in person. And normally I would just go right into let's hear your story, but I do want to talk about a magical moment that happened that caused us to be introduced to each other, which will lay the grounds for how did we even get here? I was going to an RFK event. This was years ago. And I remember I was with Dr. Bauerschmidt, and we were walking in, and I had this quiet moment on the way in. Lord, let me meet the right people tonight. And the second we walked in the door, I split off from our group, and I'm all about let's go mingle and meet with people. You were the very first person that I met, Cindy. And I remember it's like, hi, I'm Danielle. How are you? How'd you get here? And you said, I have an extremely vaccine injured daughter. And I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And, I've been following Children's Health Defense. I've been following RFK's journey. And, I had to be here tonight. And it was very hard for me because my daughter's in the ICU. And I was like, whoa, you're here. You traveled here and your daughter's in the hospital. And I remember thinking, I have no idea if we can help them. But I said, I know the smartest doctors I've ever met in my life. I would like to introduce you to them. And I literally walked you, took her arm and brought you over and introduced you to Dr. McCarter, Dr. Bauerschmidt. And this was the beginning of how we met. I can honestly say that's never happened before or since. That was just crazy. So what do we say from that?
So I remember very distinctly that was in, I believe, July of 2023. Meg was, yes, she was in ICU on a ventilator. And I was probably not at the reception for more than 5 minutes, and I met you. And it was indeed life-changing, not just for me, but more so for my daughter.
Like, I have chills. We're only right into it. And I'm hair on my arms.
Changing. You and deeper healing not only saved my daughter's life, but you gave her new life. So, very profound experience. I recall you saying, I think our doctors can help your daughter. And I remember you saying, telling us exactly what you said about praying before you walked in, and you referred to it as divine. I very clearly remember that.
Sometimes I know when it's a divine moment, and I'm like, whoa, this is definitely a divine moment.
And I think up until that point, we basically were keeping Meg alive with conventional medicine, barely. I remember after meeting you all that I went home and told my husband, who's conventionally trained as an emergency physician. I myself am a physician assistant. Um, and I remember his response was, well, if it didn't work, people wouldn't do it.
Mm,
And so that began our journey with deeper healing.
that's wild. I know. So going back to the very beginning, because I think this is really how we all got here, including myself, Tiffany, probably the world. You know, your husband's an MD, you're a physician's assistant, you lived in Pittsburgh, you have a daughter. You know, the systems that be, the medical systems, they make a recommendation, you do it. I mean, I was that person too, and I think a lot of the people out there are that, or are on some journey of that until they're not. And so let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning. How
Yeah,
did
I'm
this all
excited to
begin?
hear
Like,
this.
yeah. Okay.
I've listened to
are you
bits and pieces of your testimony, and I'm sure some of our listeners are out there who are like, what happened to her? You did mention vaccine injury. So,
so 15? Are we 15 years old when this starts?
16.
16. Okay.
yeah.
You're a teenager. You're living in Pittsburgh. Your parents are, medical people, professionals, and they're like, hey, let's go get our vaccine.
So actually, it was August 24, 2012. And actually, it wasn't even a wild child visit. It was actually a sports physical.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I
wow.
played varsity basketball in high school. And so I was needing a sports physical for the upcoming season. And they did the physical, all of the usual things. And then at the end of that physical, they said, hey, you're due for the Gardasil vaccine. We recommend it. And so my mom, obviously at that point was just like, okay. My PCP was my dad's classmate. So there was a level of trust there.
Mhm.
And she had been my PCP for probably 3 or 4 years at that point. And so we did the vaccine, and I do remember that it hurt way more than typical vaccines. But other than that, I was like, okay, let's move on with our life. I have a basketball game
Yeah, didn't
tonight.
think
Let's
about
just
it.
move on.
Right.
Within about 2.5 hours, had a fever, could not stay awake. Just body aches everywhere. I did not miss basketball games, but I did not play in that game that night. And that was
Were you
that
even
was the
connecting
beginning.
dots at that point? I don't
No.
even know that I would
No.
have connected that
No.
dot. I
No.
would have been like, "Oh, you're getting sick." You like,
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
that was
just
our
being
initial
honest.
response.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, not at all.
Okay.
Did you have like any local like inflammation or like your arm was hurting really bad or anything at the site where they did it?
I don't remember anything about the site specifically.
Yeah.
I do remember having body aches within a couple of hours.
Mhm.
So I don't remember anything specifically about the injection site, though.
Okay, so what happens next? So now you're sick at home. You're thinking you're just getting the flu or
Mhm.
going down with a cold or some.
Couple days went by, still felt pretty bad, but school was starting up again, so I just essentially continued on with my life. Um, and it wasn't really until about 6 or 7 weeks later when I was in history class, 10:30 in the morning. I called my mom and I said, "Hey, my hand and my finger are hurting really, really badly." And my finger was red, hot to the touch, and extremely sensitive. I had sustained an injury to my hand earlier in the summer, and it was exacerbated by a basketball injury. So it had been a whole process of surgery and healing from that. But then on that morning, something happened in that class, and it just started hurting really badly. And so I called my mom. She came and picked me up. We saw the hand surgeon the next day, and he said to me, uh, I know what you have. I believe you have a condition called complex regional pain syndrome, or CRPS. And the kind of bizarre thing is that it doesn't really occur in kids as young as you, which, come to find out, it is increasingly common in kids as young and even younger. But at one point, it was not extremely common. It was typically seen in originally in Civil War soldiers. Um, and obviously, medicine during the Civil War wasn't the same as it is now. But so that's really where it started. We did some testing. We confirmed the diagnosis as much as you can confirm it because it is a diagnosis of elimination.
So you were kind of being normal living at that point. You were sick, then you kind of went back to school, then you had this hand thing.
Yes.
And it was refractory. The hand therapy was started that day when she saw the hand surgeon. And over the course of weeks to months, it was not responding to conventional therapy. And at the time, we didn't really understand why. We saw several people who were experts. And we were told that no, it couldn't be complex regional pain syndrome. At the time, and later came to find out, the reason that it wasn't responding to conventional therapy was because it was immune mediated. Now, we didn't know that at the time. It was sometime later, even a couple of years, until we learned that the reason it was not responding to conventional therapy was because it was immune mediated.
Okay.
That was about 5 years.
Wait, and when
And
you
we-
say conventional therapy, are you just talking about physical therapy, or were you doing like steroids and other
No.
injections
So
and things?
occupational therapy was a big part of it. Mirror therapy and
Mirror therapy,
different modalities,
nerve blocks.
and nerve blocks.
Okay.
So it was not responding.
And then were symptoms marching on in other ways?
Yes.
Okay. So let's hear that list. Oh no, I'm afraid.
So the biggest thing that came to be the hallmark symptom that essentially turned my life upside down was severe muscle spasms. And essentially, they were most severe in my extremities. So I would get contractures in my hands, in my arms, and in my knees and my ankles. So my limbs would twist into all kinds of bizarre positions that still blow my mind to this day. But that originally started in April of 2013. And we were originally told, like, oh, this is just only a secondary to the complex regional pain syndrome. But again, not responding to any of the therapies. Some muscle relaxers would maybe work for 30 minutes, but then they wouldn't work anymore. We tried everything to keep my feet flat, but my feet ended up turning in on both sides and
And just
locking at
randomly, and also randomly, like just moving on their own.
So they were moving on their own, but they would turn in and they would lock at the
Oh,
ankle.
Wow.
And they were dislocated. I mean, I have copies of the x-rays, actually. I can send those to you. But the ankles were dislocated. And yeah, the rest of my leg and my arms and portions of my torso, my jaw, my tongue, that would all spasm. Even my face would sometimes spasm like up and down. So it almost kind of looked like maybe I was having a stroke or something, but it wasn't. It was just muscle spasms.
I mean, that had to be
This is
scary.
no, I'm
too.
literally feeling scared. I'm like,
It's
like
painful.
you're, yeah.
And this was
Incredibly
how
painful.
long after the vaccine, just for the dates? Why is this a year later? Now we're having the spasms?
That was that started in February of 2013. So we're about 6 months out from
6 months out
point.
from the vaccine. Okay.
So immediately get kind of sick, then back, then the hands began, and then this is now progressing to where like it's getting way extreme, and so it's just
And the pain went from here, or from here, to here, to here, to here,
Oh,
near
geez.
to the other side, took over this arm, and then it just went everywhere. I mean, it quite literally just, it felt like, for a while there, it felt like every other day there was more territory that was taken over by pain. And that was a lot to take on mentally.
yeah, Megan, and you're literally in high school.
I'm a junior in
You're
high
a
school at this point.
student. Okay, so mom and dad are kind of like, what the heck is going on? So I can only imagine the doctor visits, the hospital visits, I cannot, I'm pulling down a scroll right now. I'm sure there were.
We went to multiple um, multiple hospitals, multiple physicians, tried multiple therapies, and it was probably a couple of years where we had an amazing pain management physician at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. I mean, he was truly amazing, and he really had the ability to think outside the box, and that was what Meg needed. She needed someone who was willing to do that for her, to the point where he had a lot of resistance from, even the institution itself. Um, and then at I guess eventually we got to a point where they started to entertain other possibilities. Um, and it was actually this physician who first thought that perhaps she had a very rare condition called stiff person syndrome, which is 1 to 3 in a million in the adult population and even rarer in the pediatric population. They did the initial testing for that. She did have the GAD65 antibodies in her blood as well as in her spinal fluid. And the only time that you really see it in the blood, you see it in type 1 diabetics. But in spinal fluid, you only see it in stiff person syndrome. That led us to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. We went there in May of 2016. We had an initial consult with a physician there who was considered to be an expert in stiff person syndrome. He scheduled a day of testing the following day. And on the third day, we were going to return for a follow up visit before we flew home to Pittsburgh. Um, The last thing I recall is Meg saying, "Wake me up after you get your shower in the morning." Um, and so I got up, I got ready, I went to awaken Meg. She was unconscious, unresponsive, um, and I called 911. That led to her being in a coma in the neurointensive care unit for 10 days. They had no idea as to why. Certainly they ruled out, infection and the most common things. It was determined um, that it was polypharmacy that had been prescribed. So
Oh my God.
uh, she, we were very concerned. We weren't sure whether she was going to wake up, whether she was going to survive that. It was an extremely difficult time. Um, and by the grace of God, she did. She had some cognitive impairment. There were many things we were concerned about after that hospitalization. We returned to Pittsburgh. Um, she did recover from that. But essentially, we were, I would say, keeping her alive. She really wasn't improving, um, but we were keeping her stable.
Barely.
Barely.
And are you 17 years old?
So at this point, I'm 19.
Okay.
I have graduated high school and I've
Okay.
started college.
Okay.
Um,
And you're
and
still spasming.
Mhm.
You're still so you're not even walking now
No.
because that's not working.
Yeah, that's what I was
Like I was
curious
like,
about.
you're not walking.
No, she was
So I'm in a
In
wheelchair
a wheelchair.
now.
Okay.
Mhm. Now the wheelchair had been around since 2013, but in 2014, that's when it became a 24/7 constant fixture in my life. Um,
This story is just so unbelievable. It's literally like just when you think it can't get worse, don't say that because put your seatbelt on.
mhm.
My
So
gosh,
we actually The physician there at Mayo did not believe that she had stiff person, and we weren't convinced, nor was our physician at Children's Hospital. So we went to the Cleveland Clinic. We also went to a physician in New Jersey, I believe. And then we ended up seeing Dr. Scott Newsom at Johns Hopkins, who, in my opinion, is the world's expert on stiff person syndrome. Extraordinary. And we were blessed to be able to get Meghan to see him. And he did confirm the diagnosis of stiff person syndrome. And we still follow with him to this day.
Can I ask something? This is something that has gotten much, I don't know if it's just I'm more aware of it, but there's a lot more people with this now. Like I think of Celine Dion and like I know there's some major celebrities, but also just a lot more of it. Am I incorrect in saying that?
I think that's correct. I know that after Meg was diagnosed, my husband actually saw someone in the emergency department who had the diagnosis, and the patient was quite shocked that my husband even knew what
it
stiff
was.
person syndrome
Yeah,
was.
I think it's.
And then, of course, since Meg has been diagnosed, we know people from around the world who do have stiff person syndrome.
It seems like it's way on the ramp up.
Yeah, and for our listeners out there that have never heard of stiff person syndrome, can you explain exactly what it is?
So stiff person syndrome is a neurological disease with components of an autoimmune disease that causes severe muscle spasms throughout the body. And there's some other bizarre symptoms like an exaggerated startle reflex, agoraphobia, not being able to walk across an open space, joint stiffness, pain, overwhelming fatigue for a lot of patients. And oftentimes tremendous anxiety because the antibody that is believed to cause stiff person syndrome in about 80% of the cases is very destructive to the neurotransmitter GABA. And GABA is our body's natural anxiolytic. So if that's being destroyed, then that's going to cause an increase of anxiety in a lot of patients. So that's pretty much what it is.
I'd have anxiety if my body was moving uncontrollably and I couldn't walk. I mean, if you didn't have anxiety, that would be crazy, right?
But
Sorry.
she didn't have any other symptoms of that before, right?
No.
Of like anxiety or any muscle aches or things.
No.
So
I was an athlete, skiing, playing basketball, always doing some kind of mission trip or something. I was always on the go, straight A student.
I remember you saying the words catastrophically injured, and I was like, whoa, like, what does that even mean? And then I remember the other thing that I remember, I try not to read charts, so I come in fresh for these. But I do remember you ended up in the hospital all the time. It was like a cold would turn into,
Right. Yep. So she was hospitalized over that, I guess, 12-year period.
Over 110 times.
Over 110 times.
Oh
She was
my
on a
goodness.
ventilator close to 70 of those times.
So for the listeners, just because this went very fast, my hand was hurting. I'm 15. Now it's been 12 years. There's been 110 hospital visits. There's been literally consultations with the top doctors around the country. I'm sure anyone who said they could help you were like, great, we're coming. Because this is what you do. You try to figure it out. And there's going to be people out there who are going to be like, this is us, we just covered a lot of ground really quick, but that's okay because this is a short period of time. And I want to get to the hope and okay, well, how the heck did you get out of this?
So
this
I
mess,
would say that 6 years ago, Meg was in ICU. Which ended up being 32 days that she was in ICU at one of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center facilities. And we had talked, my husband and I had talked about moving somewhere warmer when we retired, never anticipating that we would move sooner than that. My reluctance was that I felt that we knew the medical system there. And I didn't know what it would be, what the resources would be for Meg if we were to move.
Mhm.
A coworker of my husband's had lived in South Carolina previously, went to work one day, and they said the hospital's closing. And so he came back to the Pittsburgh area, met my husband, they became friends, and they encouraged us to move here. It just so happened that while Meg was in the hospital on that admission, um, my husband's coworker and friend was admitted to the hospital on the floor above. And my husband texted me and said, "Hey, that his friend and his wife, whom I'd not met, was there." And I went to talk to them. Meg was having a bad day. We stayed with her pretty much 24/7. And I came back. I sat down in the ICU in her room. I applied for a job for my husband. I texted him. He was working night shift. And I said, "Hey, you just applied for a new job." And he said, "Is it south of the Mason-Dixon?" And I said, "Yes." And then by the end of the week, my husband had this job that he currently has in South Carolina.
This is
And we
crazy.
started the process of relocating. And he had 6 months out on his contract. Um,
What year was
So
this?
we moved. It was 2000.
This was November of 2018.
No, so that was November. We actually moved in, or they moved in July of 2019. I
Okay.
did not plan on moving. I was in the process of renovating a house, so I sort of stayed behind and visited them when I could. Um, and we
It's
made the move.
It's interesting dates. November 2018 was the month that Dr. B and I decided to start Deeper Healing.
Oh,
That
Oh,
was the
wow.
month. He
wow.
quit his job in January and we opened that September. So we were like a twinkle in the eye when you were moving to South Carolina. So this is really wild how puzzle pieces come together and you can only see them backwards.
And that's
Mhm.
and that's what we discussed on the way over, that there were so many things that came together years prior to us ever moving. I mean, one of them, and a big influence for us, was, following RFK Jr.
Mhm.
And his Children's Health Defense.
Mm.
And it was my and Meg's desire to meet him. And I would enter that he would have these lotteries where you could go and
Yeah.
have lunch with him.
Yes.
And, in New York, and go out with his falcons.
His falconry.
Yeah. And so when he announced his candidacy, I thought, this is the perfect opportunity. He's going to be at this small reception. I bought tickets for Meg and I. Um, and then she obviously was not able to go. My husband was working. My son drove me. And that's when we met.
That's when we met.
you.
That's wild.
So
Wild.
So truly, truly divine.
There's a big question that I have in my mind. I'm not sure I would have ever connected this to a vaccine.
Mhm.
At what point did you make that connection, or how did you make that connection?
So we don't really remember exactly how we made the connection, but the VAERS report was filed in 2015.
Okay.
So the Vaccine
Okay.
Adverse Event Reporting System report was put in late 2015.
Okay.
So
Somewhere along
some
the
point
way,
in there,
someone had said, like, hey, there's a connection here. And then when you looked into it, you're like, oh, wait, this is exactly what.
So
lined up.
Meg recalls coming home from school one day when she was in high school, and me showing her a study,
it was a documentary.
actually,
okay.
and I believe they were Scandinavians.
I believe it was Denmark, specifically. But there was a wonderful documentary that was done about girls that had been injured by Gardasil. And I watched it and I was like, oh my gosh, these girls are describing what I've been going through.
Whoa.
And so I looked at my mom and I'm like, it was almost like they could have read my mind and my body, like just what was going on, even some of the things that I hadn't really thought to say to any doctors. And I was like, oh, wait, that's connected.
Yes.
Oh, wait, that's not normal. Because at this point, I'm starting to forget what
What's even
normal even
normal
feels
is.
like anymore.
Right, exactly.
And it was unfortunate that there was such resistance to accepting that the possibility that this could have been caused by the Gardasil vaccine. Even our physician, who was a family friend and my husband's classmate from medical school, she would not acknowledge that this was a result of Gardasil, and I believe she said that she could not possibly have this many autoimmune conditions.
As many rare diseases.
And it ended a friendship actually.
Mm.
But
Well, we know lots of friendships have been ended by differing medical opinions out there. We all learned that during COVID.
Yes.
Did we ever?
Front and center, you know?
we did indeed.
And who think?
Well,
Thank-
I have a little personal question for you because you said you're a PA and your husband is an ER doc. Did I hear
Mhm.
that correctly?
Yes.
So before this happened to Meg, and it doesn't sound like you guys really connected the dots for a couple years later, like what was your experience with in the vaccine community and just, coming from a conventional background to where you're at now? I mean, I'm sure this has been a huge journey for you.
It has been. And I can tell you honestly that I myself and my husband were both indoctrinated into the system. And that's truly what it is. It's indoctrination. I had no reason up until this point to question any of it. But when you're faced with having to save your daughter's life, your child's life, I mean, it changes your perspective. And once you start to research one thing, which for me would have been vaccines and vaccine injuries, it leads to so many other things. It really does open you up to so many other questions about the system. And so
I actually think that exact reason is why people don't want to go there.
I absolutely
I
agree.
think that is if I get to the real heart of it, it's like, even within my own family members and different, because I was very conventionally raised and pretty much did everything that everyone ever said until one day I learned from School of Hard Knocks, like, well, that was a mistake, which is, I think, a lot of people. But it's very hard to look at something that you recommended to your child that was harmful. Very hard. And I've had to do that. You've had to do that, and so have millions of other people.
Yes.
So it really, when you can pull yourself away from that heavy emotion, it's really about you put your trust in the wrong place, and that's not your
Absolutely.
fault. So I want to say that out loud. It's not your fault, and
Intellectually, I know that.
I know it's really hard.
But emotionally,
It's really hard.
it's extremely difficult because I do feel responsible for what has happened to my daughter.
And it's not your fault.
I should have asked questions. I should have been better informed. I blindly trusted a friend.
Mhm.
Um,
And a system.
I did.
Because the reality is, like,
Absolutely.
it wasn't like you were in there going, is this okay? You
Right. And I had never
Yeah.
had any untoward experience prior to that.
right. So why would
Prior
you?
to my daughter being
Right.
injured. So I know it's often difficult for
Mhm.
people to accept. I think they don't want to acknowledge, as you said, it's a hard thing to acknowledge that what's being recommended to us is actually A, not what they say it is, and B, that it's potentially um, injurious
Yeah.
or life-threatening.
Yeah.
And I understand that
Yeah.
because I was that
I
person.
know.
I am conventionally trained. My husband is conventionally trained. And as I said prior to this, we had no reason to question. But once you reach the point where you're faced with this type of a situation,
Yeah.
it really does rock your
And
world.
there's so many people out there like that. So I want to go to the hopeful side, which is I call Megan this beautiful normal girl now. I remember when you first arrived. I might have said this before. If I didn't, if I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry. But I remember when you first arrived. I'm never really afraid of sick people. I mean, my husband was bedridden. I've seen thousands of sick people. And I've talked to thousands of sick people, very, very sick people, probably the most severe in, the country even. And I call them the discarded people, the people that like everyone's like, you don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
You scared me. I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So in what way? Were you in a
Like,
wheelchair? Were
mhm.
you?
She was everything.
And she was
She was
ill
everything.
appearing.
Yeah.
She
Yes.
looked unwell.
Oh
Like
my gosh.
emaciated, like
Yeah, she
like
was
very thin.
She was very thin. She looked very fragile.
Fragile. Fragile. And it also had gone on so long. That's the other thing Dr. B always says, like, if we can like shorten the time and get them here sooner, that's better.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh man, this is like 12 years. It's been going on and so much has happened. Like, is this recoverable?
Mhm.
These are the questions I'm having in my mind. And
Mhm.
I very rarely do that because I'm
Mhm.
always like, the body is amazing and everyone is recoverable.
Mhm.
So went to see you as you are now, which like I hope this camera can see. You look so beautiful and you look so vibrant and your cheeks are rosy and your skin looks great and you're walking, breathing, talking, clear-headed.
Mhm.
You're like a walking miracle. It's unbelievable. That's why I like cried when I saw you.
So tell
I
us your
literally-
experience at Deeper Healing. What all did she do? Just let's a summary because there's so much that we do there, but I want to hear like what had the biggest impact you think on you?
Well, you were probably skeptical
Well-
too. Like I'm sure. Like, what's this deeper
No,
healing?
I think we trusted.
Okay.
And we had a lot of trust in you.
Okay.
And I have to say, for Dr. Bauer-Schmidt, I have to say that even if something did scare him, you would have never known.
No.
Mm-mm.
He's very fearless.
He accepted this and just instilled confidence,
Yeah.
I think, in the process.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that I think the initial therapies where I recall the ultraviolet blood irradiation, I think Meg did have a Herxheimer reaction to that.
Mhm.
And, he basically said, okay, I knew this was going to be complicated. We just need to slow down and
Slow and low.
and do, and try some other, therapies.
We did that, and then we also did a couple sessions of the hydrocolonics, which again, in true Meghan Bayer fashion, I ended up having a reaction that I don't think they've seen before, and I swelled from head to
amazing.
toe
I recall.
from it. And I think now that we probably think that that's a combination of a genetic connective tissue disease that I have,
Okay.
and probably a lot of inflammation as well. So we did that.
You
been
did the
doing-
intensive detoxification.
Yeah, like the 2 week stay and
basically you
heal.
did.
We
Well,
did
yeah,
not.
it
We
was-
actually, we
I would say
actually
it's
drove back
stay and
forth.
heal
Oh, you
caliber,
did?
but we
Yeah.
drove back and forth.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So it was the
Which
same
I-
intensity as stay and heal, but we drove back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also like that you kind of did it like instead of just coming in for an intensive, you did it look kind of longer and slower.
We had
And
to.
kind of kept coming. So this is the miracle of you having to have moved to South Carolina.
Mhm.
So even though they live in
Nice.
South Carolina, they're not local. I'll say that because people are probably thinking you're just driving around the corner. No, they were driving. Like
No, so we were driving about 2 hours and
2 to
15.
2.5 hours, depending
to
on
come
traffic.
in. They
Right.
weren't. You weren't
Right.
around the corner. It wasn't
Right.
Right.
easy.
And I think we were
Um,
coming 3 times a week at the time.
3 to 4 times a week, for
Yeah.
different therapies.
When
had
did you
to-
start to notice like improvements?
Oh, well, I got frustrated very early on because everybody kept saying, "Oh, I feel so good from this UVB. I feel so good from this UVB," and I'm like, I feel like garbage.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here? And it wasn't until, oh gosh, it was probably about 3 months.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
makes
it
sense.
wasn't for like an additional 18 months until the switch flipped,
Mhm.
where I was like, oh, I actually feel like I'm 20 again.
Oh.
Like I feel like how I should have felt when I was 20.
Yeah.
Now I'm not 16 anymore, so it would be impossible to say like I feel like my 16-year-old self again. But I think it's fair to say I probably feel how a 20 or 21-year-old would feel.
It's
Which
funny
is,
when
I'm glad
when
that I get to go back and experience
I
this.
know, and I love that you just said that the switch flipped.
Because that's what happened.
My husband experienced that. Like, I remember he was like, I feel so amazing. I'm going to go buy shoes and I'm going to go play basketball. This is a bedridden person. I was like, what? Like, it was just like, that's impossible. I literally said, that's impossible. He's like, no, it's not. And I'm doing it because that was all he wanted to do. And I'll say to people sometimes, especially when they're in it intensively and they're not feeling good. And we're like, that's okay. This is the process working. There's going to be a day when you've turned the corner. And I've had so many people through the years like, I turned the corner. And I'm like, yes, yes. So for you, that was a long process. But
was it like November of 2024? So we started this process in August of 2023. That was about November of 2024.
And so while you're not at Deeper Healing, of course, you guys are doing all the things as well.
So a big part of, I think initially, a big part of that was actually detoxifying from all of the pharmaceuticals. So she and all patients who have stiff person syndrome are on huge doses of muscle relaxers, very strong muscle relaxers, benzodiazepines. She was on Valium. Daily, she was taking 120 milligrams a day. So if you consider someone might take 5 or 10 milligrams a day, she was on 120. And if we needed to, what we refer to as rescue her, if she was having spasms, we would give as much as 220 milligrams, in addition to a potent muscle relaxer called tizanidine. So I think those initial months,
there was quite a load to unload.
Right. There was. So I think that was a big portion of it, was actually weaning her from all of these. She was on a lot of medication. And I am happy to report that today she is on insulin. Through this, she was diagnosed, through the process, she's been diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic.
Well, I'm not saying yay to that, but I'm saying yay to the other.
She is on
It's a small price to pay.
We'll take it.
She is on insulin only. Now, she does take supplements, but the only true pharmaceutical is insulin.
This is amazing.
That is so awesome.
This is amazing.
So that was like 30 plus 40, even 45 drugs at some points, down to insulin.
Amazing.
Wow. That's, I consider that a very small price to pay.
Yeah.
That my pancreas decided to quit and all of this, and I have to take insulin. I consider that a tiny price to pay.
Absolutely.
Tiny price to pay.
And there's some other things to brag on about you. So obviously you can walk. You're not in the hospital. I mean, where do we even begin about the lack of suffering and getting back to life and having clarity and being able to talk and going back to school and getting a degree?
So throughout this, I recall when she was at the University of Pittsburgh getting her undergraduate degree, I recall driving into the city, picking her up at 6 a.m. to take her to a nearby hospital to have plasmapheresis. Returning her, and then I would drive her, because she was in a chair, and the University of Pittsburgh, as anyone who knows Pitt, it's built basically on a hillside, and so it wasn't easy to navigate in a wheelchair. And so I would just sit on campus in my vehicle, and I would drive her from class to class, and that's how she navigated 4 years. To be able to get her undergrad degree. And I mean,
I think you should have gotten a second degree or a third degree.
And so, yeah.
Wow.
And then once we moved here, she decided to get her master's in social work, and
graduated with that last year too. In May 2024, passed my boards in December. So now I'm working as a social worker, and I'm loving it.
You're amazing.
And I love being able to advocate for my patients, and support them in ways that I wish that I could have been supported, um, and in ways that I was supported, because there were some people that were absolutely the shining stars that showed me how to advocate for myself, how to ask for what I needed, to ask for accommodations. And those are the people that I keep in mind whenever I'm interacting with my patients and trying to be that person for them as well.
I mean, it's amazing. Your journey is amazing. You're amazing. I literally love you. I get like like, it's funny, like you're the girl I was most afraid of, and you're the girl like I'm like most proud of. Like it's unbelievable. And you too, Cindy.
Thank you.
Because honestly, I'm a mama bear. You know, I know what it's like when one of my cubs is not well. And I don't know if it's worse for us or them, honestly. And, you know, to have warrior parents that don't give up, keep persisting, keep going, like, we're gonna figure this out.
And to have an open mind, I
To
think,
like,
because I feel like when you're in that conventional medicine space, to come out and think, a little, have curiosity and to, question some different narratives, that's a big, big,
But I think
step.
when you're so desperate to save your child that you would do anything, I mean, I I think you're looking for answers, and I truly believe that night when I met you was divine.
divine,
And I think,
100%.
some of the biggest lessons I've learned is that I think in this space, patients feel as though they're not heard. I think that they are discredited, they are disregarded. Conventional medicine, if they don't know what it is, they're going to write you off. You either have a psychiatric illness. It couldn't possibly be that there is something organically wrong. I think the other really big lesson for me, and I think this is important for everyone, is that every patient needs and deserves an advocate. I cannot emphasize that enough. There have been so many times in the past 12 years where there could have been catastrophic outcomes for Meg. There were drug overdoses. There was a Valium withdrawal. These are all medical emergencies where things could have turned out very differently for
And they all
us.
happened in the hospital.
Right.
I mean, honestly,
oh,
it is a
wow.
miracle you're alive.
It
And
is.
it
Like,
truly,
liter-
110%.
literally,
It's a
it's a
miracle that I'm
miracle.
alive and that my brain still works the way that it does.
Yes, your
Yeah.
brain is working.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's so awesome.
You know, testament again, the body's amazing.
it really
And
is.
given the opportunity, it rallies. And the brain, like we always talk about, like what could be fixed, what can we expect? The brain is one area, like the brain is amazing at recovering. Like everything that you went through. And then, as you said, the heavy drug use,
Ugh,
like that's a whole other, that
I
came after.
I
mean,
never anticipated it was so concerning. One, that when she was at Mayo, that she was in um, a coma for that long. That was not medically induced. They that they didn't know why. And then when I remember taking her home, I remember the drive home and her being cognitively impaired. And I just thought, oh my gosh, is she ever going to recover? Because she is extraordinarily bright. And I just thought, oh my gosh, is she ever going to recover from that?
It took about 6 months.
Wow.
So it was about halfway through the next semester in the fall, because I decided stubbornly to go back to college in the fall. It was about half of that semester before my brain finally, like my short-term memory came back.
yeah.
So it was just in time to take my midterms. And
Wow.
that was the first semester I ended up on the dean's list.
Wow.
So, um, it ended up working out, but I always say, that God has protected my brain.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so there's clearly some more stuff for me to do
And he
to
had a
use that
plan.
brain.
He brought y'all
He had a
together.
plan. Oh
And
my
you're here
God.
at Deeper Healing. So this was an awesome
This was an
story.
amazing, amazing story. May this story help many, many people. As Dr. B always says, he's the clinic of last resort, and they have the gift of desperation, which you guys definitely did have. But may your story shorten someone's runway out there who's going to hear this and may not be as severe as this, but may go, wait a minute, there's something here. I want to find out the documentary name because we're
Yeah, I
going
wanna
to put
know
that in
that
the show
too.
notes. If we can get that, we'll
If-
do that.
If YouTube hasn't blocked it.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
a feeling
YouTube
a
may have
lot of them
blocked
are
it by now.
blocked.
Well, if we can find the name, I'd love to put that out there. And we are just in love with you guys. So thank you, Cindy and Meghan Bayer. Your story's incredible. And thank you for being the mom that you are and the incredible warrior you are. And now you're breathing into the next people that need help through their own journeys. So
And
thank you.
please know that we feel the same about you, and we are forever grateful for not only saving Meg's life, but for giving her life.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you. We got
All
a
right.
hug on that.
everybody out there, thank you so much for joining today. Just check out the show notes, and we will see you next.
We hope this episode inspired you. Here's how to go deeper. Visit deeperhealing.com to become a patient. Online, we have loads of courses and a free toxin quiz. Subscribe and please, please share this episode with someone who needs it. It's always that one-on-one support that really gets people to find deeper healing. Remember, this is educational content, not medical advice. The information shared here should be discussed with your own personal healthcare provider. If you're excited by listening to the medical experts or the personal recovery stories on here and you want to start your own deeper healing journey, go to deeperhealing.com and start your process.